Well, welcome to this BC Strategies podcast. This is really our part 2 recap of Enterprise Connect 2025. There were so many BC Strategies experts at the show. We had to kind of break it into these two parts. I think we participated in 23 or so sessions by last count, but certainly there were a lot of BC Strategies experts that were involved in many different ways and had lots of discussions with vendors, other analysts, the end users. And so what I'm going to ask of the experts is, what was your one takeaway or something that surprised you or the most interesting thing that you walked away from Enterprise Connect 2025 with? And so let's go first to BC Strategies expert Blair Pleasant. Hi, Blair.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks. So I wasn't on the first one, so I'm sure they talked about this, but since I'm the first one on this one, I get to talk about it. So I'm just amazed at how quickly agentic AI has risen to the forefront. I mean, I hadn't even heard of the term a year and a half ago, and now it was what everybody was talking about. And the first thing, whenever I would have my one-on-one with a vendor, which was a lot, as soon as the word agentic came up, I would say, how do you define it? Because they all define it differently, usually based on what they offer. So it seems like all the definitions have one thing in common, and that's agentic AI has reasoning and can do tasks. Now, there was some difference of opinion as far as autonomy and whether agentic AI is autonomous, because some of the vendors I spoke to said that's the end goal, but we're seeing different stages in the evolution of agentic AI. So autonomous is kind of, the end game, but we're not necessarily there yet. So right now, reasoning and tasks, but the task might be, it's on behalf of the human, but the human might kind of help lead it along. But I did find it interesting that there was some consensus, but also differentiation. But I was just amazed at how quickly agentic AI became part of our vernacular. And, I always do this fake drinking game at these events. And so I said, we can't make agentic AI the drinking game for this event because we would just all be blotto, after the first session.
There you go.
So, but what kind of annoyed me is it's hard to know what's real and what isn't. So everyone's talking about it, but a lot of these were just demos and, soon to be GA. So I know TalkDesk is one of the few that actually has customers and, has actually been doing this and has customers using their agentic AI. For most of the others, I think it's still we're doing this, but we don't have the pricing model down. We don't really have it down yet. So I guess that's something we need to be a little firmer with the vendors, is find out, where is this really in reality. So I can go on, but I'll let the others go next.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that people had different definitions, because I think that was, and as you said, based on what they have, because agentic AI is supposed to have some form of agency, which means that it's making some decisions. So more you give it a goal, and then you don't need to break down the steps, and it figures out how to achieve that goal, right? So, but there are different levels, as you say, the autonomous and what have you. So no, that's a great takeaway. And also, there was some drinking at Enterprise Connect, but not during the sessions, or at least I didn't notice that. That was like post session. So there you go. So let's go to Martha Beyer. Martha, what was your takeaway or a surprise or the most interesting thing you found at Enterprise Connect?
So I want to, Blair couldn't have given me a better introduction, but I want to go with a lower tech, a lower tech conclusion, which is that everybody defines what AI is differently. And I don't think, I'm not convinced that everyone understands certainly what it is, and secondly, how it works. I think it's a phrase. I had the privilege of having dinner with Terry Matthews, who said, this is a new tech wave. And I said, yes, but it's a tech wave built on shaky ground. And there'll be something in No Jitter about this in the next couple days. But I will tell you, interestingly, and this also really tied into my Enterprise Connect experience, I'm teaching a class in ethics and IT. And I asked the students today, for today, to identify why it is that AI was not good at doing predictions of the NCAA March Madness bracket. And they came up with, they hit the nail on the head, which is you can put all the math in the world in things, but it doesn't explain why some teams slump some days, why some players slump some days. It simply is not capable of doing that. So I think it's here, it's powerful, it's driving a lot of things, but I think I think it's a big black hole to many people, and I think it remains that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know I'm going to go over to my BC Strategies expert, David Maldow, but also we do the AI chefs, and we talk a lot about, kind of how understanding a little bit about how AI works. I think, that helps everybody, right? So, if you have a little bit of an understanding, you can write better prompts, you can do a better job on supervising it so you don't get fooled when it, does something wrong. But David Maldow, or should I say, yes, chef? What
Yes,
was your
chef.
biggest takeaway from Enterprise Connect 2025?
All right, I'm going to take advantage here. I want to double dip. I kind of a lot of times I'm quiet in these things, so I kind of have a double
Okay.
here. So, but I just first a quick comment on the agentic AI, because what I like about it is, and I think Blair, I agree with Blair's reasoning and actually doing something. A lot of the examples that we're seeing are in the contact center, because an agentic AI can be an agent. It's so obvious, right? Duh. I mean, it just, right? It can answer the call. It can reason out what the person needs, and it could send them the free t-shirt.
But the terminology in the contact center is so confusing now, because is it an AI agent or is it a human agent? So the term agent is just confusing everybody.
Yes. Is it an AI agent? Is it a human agent? And if it's an AI agent, is it an agentic AI agent or not? But the example of an agentic AI agent really makes sense. But I like the idea of agentic AI in the UC space. In Kevin and I were talking about in Zoom Docs. You talk to the AI in Zoom Docs, and it says, you should do this now, you should do that now. And sometimes I'm like, you're my assistant. You should do, I say summarize a stock, and it says, this is a great plan for your sales strategy. You should reach out to Kevin and have a meeting about this project you want to do with him. You reach out to Kevin and set up the meeting. You work for me. So the idea of agentic AI in UC, I love. But to my takeaway from the show, not my big takeaway, but the one thing that I'm like, ooh, I like this, is something that happened in the Microsoft demo. I think they call it Facilitator. And let's do video. Before the pandemic, before Zoom, I was saying video is not a substitute for flight. People were saying remember beginning of time, we were saying you save flight costs by getting video. It's an upgrade for the phone. If you were in a meeting room with a bunch of people, would you climb under the table and say, I could participate better this way if I just hear you? No, you want to see. And our AI agents, they're on the phone. They can just listen. All they can do is listen and transcribe and do speaking summaries that they can't see. And this facilitator thing, it can see through the camera. And I may sound creepy, but I love it. So if it's in the meeting room when you walk in, it's not just doing the head counts for the, for the people who, IT people who are figuring out the rooms and everything. It knows, oh, David's in this meeting. We're going to be talking about this today. I should bring up this stuff. I should bring these files in. And by the way, David, your water bottle's empty. You need to hydrate. Go get yourself some water. If it could see what's going on in the room, that is you could hear my octaves of my voice. It gets me excited.
Yeah, that.
David, if I can add something, where I thought you were going when you said Microsoft, the other thing that blew me away at Enterprise Connect was the Microsoft demo when Snorri from Cisco came on, and they did not only real-time translation, Snorri spoke in German, but it was in his voice.
Yeah.
So there's a 6-second delay. We spoke to Ilya the next day about it. So he said there is a 6-second delay, but I mean, it was amazing. It was Snorri's voice. It was just really impressive.
The fact that it sounded like, not like a close, what's it called, Creepy Valley version of his voice. It sounded like him.
Right. Yeah, that's the interpreter. That's the interpreter agent. They just this week released the analyst agent. Maybe it replaces some of us analysts, but they've got the facilitator agent, the interpreter agent, because of course Microsoft is trying to load up that $30 per user per month Copilot license with a bunch of this, unique capability to kind of, justify some of that licensing, right? So, yeah, so those are great, takeaways. Let's kind of, I don't know, broaden and just talk about the show overall. As everybody likely has heard, this was the last year at the Gaylord Palms with the Gators, and now next year it's still in March, but it's moving to Las Vegas, and it's going to be a 3 full day show. I know Blair loves that because it's closer to you.
Time zone.
Yes, there you go, time zone. Yes, Orlando is in the same time zone as me and as David and as Martha. So 3 of us, if we got to vote, we would maybe keep it in the same place. But anyway, it's exciting. So talk about kind of broadly Enterprise Connect 2025. Was it the AI show? Is it the contact center show? Like what is it this year, and what do you expect it to kind of become as it transitions to Vegas into 2026? Maybe I'll go backwards. So David, we'll start with you.
That's a big, it's up in the air. It remains a great show for networking, for partners, for vendors, for analysts, for content, for keynotes. Are we going to draw back the end users in the quantities that will make everyone stop complaining about the lack of end users? I mean, it's really what it comes down to. As far as the focus of the show, I mean, aren't they doing a separate AI show? So this can't really become the AI show, but obviously AI is going to be a major theme continuing throughout. And I think it's, at some point, do we have to, I don't know if we need to rename it or anything, because it's still Enterprise Connect, but a big part of how we connect enterprises these days is through the contact center. I mean, it's a contact center show. We need to start calling it that, don't we? It's not a UC show with some contact center. It's a contact center show.
Yes, there you go. Well, here, let me go quickly to Martha, because I know Martha has a hard stop in like 2 minutes. So you'll be brief. There you go.
I don't have much to say. The only session that I was on was regarding Next Generation 911, and there were 6 of us in 45 minutes. So we each got to speak for about 30 seconds. So it really is the contact center show, and I think David has a fair point. Florida's easier, but whatever. I'm easy. Traditional telecom is really not even a driving force. It's like next to nothing.
Right.
And I think that's just the way it is.
There you go. So okay. Although obviously E911 and Next Generation 911, these are important. There needs to be a forum to figure this out, because there is a lot of confusion around that. So I imagine that session was, there was probably a lot of people that were trying to get some answers.
I would say 45 minutes for 6 speakers is not a good way to do anything.
I think there's been some discussion on panel sessions and what is the optimal, and there were 30-minute panel sessions with 5 or 6 speakers, which means you got 20 seconds each. So I think Eric is perhaps looking at that, because there's been some feedback.
I would also just say briefly, there was some pushback on one of the panelists prior to the show, and he's one of the people who draws the most attention at the event. So I thought that was a little peculiar, but it is what it is.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. I know I'm going to exit you from the stage so you can go on to your next thing, and then we will move over to Blair. So Blair, kind of maybe not necessarily predictions, but kind of what do you hope for Enterprise Connect 2026?
So as we've all been saying, it's become more, contact center or CX. I think we have to start talking CX. I had a few interesting discussions with people about CCaaS and the actual what we used to call ACD or whatever. So the CCaaS is actually being seen now as plumbing. I know Google mentioned that, and a couple other people said, CCaaS isn't what's important. It's all the other stuff on top of it. It's the AI, it's the workforce optimization. It's all these other things that kind of go along with it. And I think more and more we're going to be seeing, yes, it's going to be contact center / CX, or actually CX / contact center, but not CCaaS. So I think we will be seeing that, but I think we're going to be seeing, again, more of the not ancillary, but the non-CCaaS things, again, AI and all these other things that are so important. And, at Zendesk Relate, they just announced, a new offering. Google's been going, full force, and in 2 weeks, I'll be at Google Next, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about that a bit. So I'm hoping that Enterprise Connect can get some of these other players more involved. So maybe instead of a keynote from, a typical UC vendor, we'll be hearing more from AWS did give a keynote. But I'm hoping to hear, maybe from some more of these other players. So I think CX is going to be definitely an overriding theme as it has been the past few years. But that being said, there still were a lot of sessions, David did video sessions.
Yep.
I did a session on the integration of UC and CC, which is still important. So I think the UC and collaboration part still is an important part, and we shouldn't discount it. But more and more it's becoming CX, and I think that'll just continue because that's where the vendors are focusing. If we think about the typical UC vendors, they're all doing so much in CX now. I've had a good talk with Microsoft about some of the stuff they're doing. Zoom, obviously, Cisco's doing really well with its contact center stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the typical UC vendors talking more about their CC offerings.
Right.
That's where the growth is. Everyone, Zoho, everyone's growing in contact center, and they're using it to bring in their business to UC. There are vendors that have great UC solutions. I'll name them. WebEx. WebEx used to make fun of it. WebEx is a great UC solution. They're not going out and selling WebEx and saying, hey, here's how WebEx matches up against Zoom, get WebEx.
Right.
And they could. It's on par. What they're doing is they're getting with the contact center and saying, hey, you love us in the contact center. Why don't just use us for everything? And the customer, like, once they're in, they're like, oh, actually WebEx is good. And I'm hearing the same thing from RingCentral and the same thing from Zoho. It's there's so much growth in contact center. Just focus on everything there. Make sure everything else is good, but get the new customers in there and then upsell them on everything else.
Yeah,
we used to talk about the attach rate, what's the attach rate of contact center to UC, and now it's kind of the other way around. It's what's the attach rate of UC to contact center, to your point, David.
Yeah, I have a theory about that. Like, I think that, AI has actually driven more focus on contact center because that's where it's easier to prove a business case. And I think we're going to see, and I had an opportunity to talk to, some of the people at WebEx working on the AI, and, they, like Zoom, have a single AI platform. I think we're going to see a lot of incubation of AI agents in the contact center by the vendors that have strong contact centers. And then once they get it right and prove a business case, I think they take that same, agent capability with the grounding and all the techniques that the guardrails, everything that worked if it works for your customers, I think then it's a lot easier to say, hey, let's take those same capabilities and make them available to your knowledge workers, to your frontline workers. So I think a lot of development in the contact center. And the last piece on the contact center is Amazon Connect. I thought that they did a great job showing off AI infused across the new version of Amazon Connect. You flipped one toggle switch, and then it was really deep AI. It wasn't kind of like AI where you had to do anything. It was AI that helped you with workforce management, AI that helped you with, call quality, all kinds of things that just, surfaced kind of insights when you needed them. So I thought that was a really good example of what somebody's doing when they're really leading with AI and reevaluating an entire platform. But with that, I'm going to thank David, Blair. I'm going to thank Martha, who has moved on to something else. But this is great to get the different perspectives from the BCStrategies experts. Really the strength, if you're watching this, the strength of BCStrategies is, that independent analyst, consultant, thought leader, advisor across with lots of different opinions. And I think that's a real strength. And Blair and David, thank you for sharing some of those strengths and your opinions with me and with the audience today.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. This was fun.